Let's face it, America has built some truly awful cars. We're talking about vehicles so unreliable, ugly, or just downright weird that they left drivers shaking their heads for decades. But which disasters are the absolute worst? Ever wondered which car has the most embarrassing legacy in US history? Buckle up, because these are the 15 cars you really don't want in your driveway. Ford Pinto, 1971-1980. Some cars are born bad, and then there's the Ford Pinto, a car that literally became a punchline for disaster. On paper, the Pinto was supposed to be Ford's answer to the wave of small imports flooding the US in the early 70s. But behind the marketing, the Pinto had a deadly secret, a rear-mounted gas tank that had a nasty habit of bursting into flames after even a minor rear-end collision. The Pinto Memo, internal documents showing Ford weighed the cost of lawsuits against the cost of a recall, only deepened the scandal. Suddenly, the Pinto wasn't just a lemon, it was a corporate cautionary tale. Owners were left with a car that was cheap, yes, but also potentially lethal, earning it endless late-night jokes and even inspiring a few nervous glances at stoplights. Even today, Pinto is shorthand for dangerous car. But what's wild is that Ford sold more than 3 million of them, proving that in the 70s, people would buy just about anything with a blue oval badge. It's one of those cars that changed the industry forever, but only because it scared people into demanding safer vehicles. The Pinto's legacy, explosive, literally. Chevrolet Vega, 1921-1977. Imagine launching a car with big dreams, then watching it rust before it leaves the showroom. That was the reality of the Chevrolet Vega, GM's highly anticipated compact that quickly turned into a cautionary tale for car buyers everywhere. The Vega looked sporty and promised an affordable entry into the Chevy family, but underneath was a rolling disaster. Its aluminum engine was notorious for overheating and warping, sometimes giving out well before hitting 50,000 miles. The body panels, they could rust through after a single Midwest winter. And if that wasn't enough, the car leaked oil like it was auditioning for an environmental PSA. The result was a vehicle so unreliable that even die-hard Chevy fans started thinking twice. GM poured money into fixing recalls and patching problems, but the damage was done. The Vega had already earned a reputation as one of the worst American cars ever. It's the kind of car that made people swear off GM compacts for a generation. If you bought a Vega hoping for cheap fun, you got cheap and a whole lot of not-so-fun trips to the mechanic. AMC Gremlin 1970-1978. If a car could win an award for most awkward on the road, the AMC Gremlin would take the crown. Just one look at this car, and you know AMC was trying something different, maybe a little too different. Introduced on April Fool's Day, the Gremlin was America's attempt to fight back against fuel-efficient imports, but with an oddball design that looked like someone lopped off the back of a regular car and called it a day. Inside, drivers found just as many quirks: Spartan interiors, rattly build quality, and an engine that sometimes felt like it was powered by wishful thinking. Reliability was a mixed bag at best, with electrical Gremlins living up to the car's name. But the weirdest part? Despite all its flaws, the Gremlin somehow developed a cult following. Maybe it was the cheap price, maybe it was the so ugly, it's cool aesthetic, or maybe people just love an underdog. Either way, owning a Gremlin meant embracing the strange and making peace with the fact that you'd probably never get anywhere fast. It's a car that proves being memorable isn't always the same as being good. Yugo GV, 1985-1992. You know a car's in trouble when comedians make a living off its reputation. Enter the Yugo GV, the bargain basement import from Yugoslavia that promised Americans a real European car for less than $4,000. What buyers actually got was a masterclass in disappointment. The Yugo's boxy shape was the least of its problems. Under the hood, everything was suspect. The engine was underpowered, the build quality was shoddy, and parts seemed to break with the regularity of a metronome. If you tried to push it on the highway, it felt like it might shake itself apart. Worst of all, reliability was so poor that the car became a punchline before it even had a chance to get old. Owners joked that when a Yugo broke down, it cost less to just buy another than to fix the one you had. But behind the jokes, the reality was grim. The Yugo was unsafe, unrefined, and barely able to keep up with traffic. For many, it was their first car, and probably the reason they swore off cheap imports for life. In the end, the only thing enduring about the Yugo was its reputation as America's all-time worst import. Pontiac Aztek, 2001-2005. The Pontiac Aztek didn't just miss the mark. It smashed right through it, spun around, and left everyone wondering how it ever made it to production. Conceived as a bold crossover that would break the mold, the Aztek instead became the poster child for automotive design gone wrong. Its exterior was a jumble of awkward lines, clashing panels, and plastic cladding that seemed glued on as an afterthought. Inside, things didn't get much better, with cheap materials and odd ergonomic choices. Yet, Pontiac loaded the Aztek with weird features, like a removable cooler, tent option, and plenty of storage tricks, aiming for adventurous buyers. But no amount of quirky add-ons could distract from how genuinely unattractive and uninspiring the car felt to drive. Sales tanked, and the Aztek quickly found itself mocked in TV shows and late-night monologues. Ironically, its starring role in Breaking Bad gave it a kind of cult status, but that didn't erase years of ridicule. The Aztek will always be remembered as a car that tried too hard and failed spectacularly. Cadillac Cimarron, 1982-1988. The Cadillac Cimarron is proof that a luxury badge can't hide a mediocre car underneath. Born from GM's idea of saving money by rebadging the Chevy Cavalier, the Cimarron arrived on the scene with lofty promises and a price tag that raised eyebrows. Unfortunately, drivers who paid up for Cadillac prestige got a car that was barely different from its cheaper GM siblings. Same compact size, underwhelming four-cylinder engine, and bargain basement trim. Cadillac fans were stunned. Where was the plush ride, the silence, the smooth V8? Instead, buyers got hard plastics, noisy engines, and cheap upholstery, all for a premium price. Reviewers savaged the Cimarron, and even Cadillac loyalists started jumping ship. GM eventually tried to improve the car, but the damage was done. The Cimarron became a textbook example of badge engineering gone wrong, tarnishing Cadillac's reputation for years. It's the kind of car that makes you wonder if anyone at the factory ever actually drove it, or if they just hoped the name alone would be enough. Spoiler, it wasn't. Chevrolet Chevette, 1976-1987. Every car company has a basic bare-bones model, but the Chevrolet Chevette took no frills to a whole new level. GM introduced the Chevette as a budget-friendly commuter car, and it absolutely looked and felt the part. Boxy, Spartan, and powered by an engine that sounded tired from day one. Performance was, in a word, sluggish. 0 to 60 took what felt like forever, and even then, the ride was noisy and rough. The interior, think plastic everywhere, seats that wore out before the tires, and a radio that seemed to pick up only static. Reliability was hit or miss, with some Chevettes managing to soldier on for years and others turning into driveway ornaments after a few winters. Still, the Chevette found buyers, mostly because it was cheap to buy and even cheaper to fix. But cheap is a double-edged sword, and for most drivers, the Chevette was a daily reminder that you really do get what you pay for. It's the car people bought out of necessity, not love, and nobody ever bragged about owning one. Chrysler PT Cruiser 2001-2010. When the PT Cruiser hit the streets, people either loved its retro styling or hated it with a passion. Chrysler hoped to cash in on nostalgia, but the bloom wore off fast. Underneath the quirky sheet metal was an economy car platform with all the usual headaches, rough ride, so-so handling, and an interior that looked better in photos than in real life. Reliability quickly became a sore spot, with electrical gremlins, failing components, and transmission issues cropping up almost from day one. What started as a sales sensation fizzled into a punchline as PT Cruisers piled up on used car lots, their value dropping like a rock. Even the once cool turbo models couldn't save the PT's reputation. Owners looking for practical fun found themselves dealing with endless repairs and a car that was somehow both cramped and awkwardly tall inside. The PT Cruiser stands as a warning. Sometimes chasing trends leads you straight to the scrap heap. Dodge Caliber 2007-2012. Dodge hoped the Caliber would replace the beloved Neon and bring some attitude to the compact segment. What drivers got was a jarring blend of odd design choices, uninspiring performance, and cheap interior materials that felt straight out of a dollar store. The Caliber's boxy, aggressive styling tried to look tough, but just came across as awkward, while under the hood, the engines were noisy and underpowered. The infamous CVT transmission made acceleration feel like pulling a stubborn mule, and handling was more floaty than fun. Inside, the hard plastics, rattles, and poorly finished trim made the Caliber feel cheap from the driver's seat. Dodge did include a few weird features, like a chill zone glove box, but none of them made up for the car's overall lack of refinement. The Caliber quickly became a favorite for rental fleets, where its reputation as a bland, unreliable workhorse grew with every disappointed driver. For most owners, it was a reminder that not every bold idea is a good one. Saturn Ion 2003-2007. The Saturn Ion was supposed to help redefine GM's different kind of car company. Instead, it became one of Saturn's biggest headaches. Outfitted with plastic body panels that never seemed to match the color of the rest of the car, the Ion was plagued by quality control issues and recalls right from the start. The infamous center-mounted instrument cluster was confusing and awkward, and the interior plastics felt more suited to a children's toy than a new car. Reliability wasn't much better, with ignition switch failures, electrical glitches, and noisy drivetrains. Owners quickly realized that Saturn's space-age promise didn't translate into real-world value or durability. The Ion's handling was forgettable, the ride was bouncy, and resale values plummeted almost immediately. It's the kind of car that left even Saturn's loyal fans wondering what went wrong, and may have helped seal the brand's fate. In the end, the Ion proved that not all innovation is progress. Oldsmobile diesel cars, 1978-1985. In the late 1970s, fuel efficiency was on everyone's mind, and GM thought it had a shortcut to the future. Slap a diesel engine into an Oldsmobile and call it innovation. The result was one of the industry's most infamous disasters. Oldsmobile engineers tried to adapt their existing gas engines for diesel, but the minimal changes led to a host of serious problems. These engines were rough, underpowered, and extremely unreliable. Head gasket failures, cracked engine blocks, and faulty fuel systems became a recurring nightmare for owners and mechanics alike. The diesels were also notoriously smoky and loud, giving diesel cars a terrible reputation in America that still lingers today. It didn't take long for word to get out. Resale values crashed, and GM's reputation took a hit that lasted for years. Many frustrated owners ended up swapping the diesel for a gas engine, while others just gave up on the car entirely. The Oldsmobile diesel mess stands as a cautionary tale. Chasing trends with half measures can end up costing you dearly, both in money and trust. In the end, this experiment set American diesel cars back for a generation. Lincoln Blackwood 2002. The Lincoln Blackwood looked like a can't-miss concept. Blend luxury SUV comfort with the usefulness of a pickup. But by the time it reached showrooms, it was clear something had gone very wrong. Sure, the Blackwood had a plush interior and a strong V8, but the bed, a key feature, was tiny, carpeted, and permanently covered by a bulky power tonneau. The end result, the Blackwood was all show, no utility. Lincoln priced it above proven pickups, but offered less practicality than even the cheapest work truck. Only a few thousand were sold before Lincoln quietly pulled the plug after just 1 year. The resale value fell off a cliff, and the Blackwood quickly earned a place as a trivia answer. What's the most impractical pickup ever sold in America? For Lincoln, the lesson was clear. Even a luxury brand can stumble if it loses sight of what buyers actually want. The Blackwood stands as a reminder that features and gimmicks can't replace common sense. In the end, it's one of those rare vehicles remembered not for what it did right, but for how spectacularly it missed the mark. Daihatsu Charade, 1988-1992. Sometimes it feels like the Daihatsu Charade was built to be forgotten. This tiny Japanese import tried to tempt American buyers with low prices and high gas mileage, but ended up proving there's such a thing as too cheap. The Charade's lightweight build meant it felt flimsy on the road, and the tiny engine struggled even at city speeds. Turn on the AC and you were practically in slow motion. Comfort wasn't part of the equation. The interior was bare bones, and the ride was more bumpy go-kart than everyday commuter. Reliability was hit or miss. Some owners limped along with constant repairs and hard-to-find parts, especially after Daihatsu pulled out of the US market and support vanished overnight. The Charade lacked the solid reputation of its Japanese rivals, and most buyers learned a tough lesson about cutting corners on a car. In the end, the Daihatsu Charade faded from memory, leaving little more than a footnote in American automotive history. For those who did own one, it's a reminder that sometimes saving money up front means paying for it later, in frustration and forgettable drives. Renault Alliance 1983-1987. The Renault Alliance was supposed to be the best of both worlds, European engineering with American sensibility, all built in Wisconsin. But instead of winning over buyers, the Alliance earned a reputation as a rolling headache. Build quality was spotty, with misaligned panels, electrical issues, and interiors that fell apart far too quickly. Performance was nothing to write home about, with sluggish acceleration and uninspired handling. Reliability quickly became a punchline, as owners found themselves on a first-name basis with their local mechanic. Recalls piled up, and so did complaints. By the end of its run, the Alliance had become a cautionary tale about the dangers of cross-continental partnerships that failed to deliver. Most of the surviving Alliances ended up in junkyards long before their time, leaving little behind but memories of frustration and regret. For many, the name Alliance is still a reminder of automotive disappointment. Plymouth Reliant Dodge Aries, 1981-1989. Chrysler's K-cars are legendary for saving the company, but from the driver's seat, the Plymouth Reliant and Dodge Aries were little more than beige boxes on wheels. Introduced as practical, affordable transportation, these cars delivered on price, but little else. The engines were basic, the handling was forgettable, and the styling was, let's be honest, unremarkable even in their day. Interiors felt cheap, with hard plastics and thin upholstery that didn't hold up to daily use. Reliability was decent at first, but as the miles added up, so did the squeaks, rattles, and breakdowns. Still, millions of Americans owned a K-car at some point, if only because they didn't have many other options in the early 80s. For Chrysler, the Reliant and Aries were a business triumph. For drivers, they were appliances, useful but never loved. They represent an era when good enough was sometimes all you could hope for. So there you have it, the cars that proved even the biggest automakers can get it spectacularly wrong. Which one made you cringe the most, or maybe even showed up in your own driveway? Drop your pics in the comments and share your stories. Don't forget to subscribe for more car confessions, because the worst rides make the best stories. See you next time.